I'm Angie Larson. I am Jim's daughter. I'm the oldest, so I'm clearly the wisest of my siblings, right? And I work over at Lutheran Memorial Church, which is on Grandview's campus. So it's a nice Danish Lutheran church, if any of you are kind of familiar with that. And I've been the deacon there for about 3.5 years. Like Sandy said, I've gotten the chance to take meals from the Heartland over to Ghana in a partnership with my dad. And so one of the things I want to do today is just talk to you about what that experience is like. So we'll kind of share a little bit of that. We have a little video I'll show you at the end and things like that. So I am a deacon. That's a funny church word, right? That doesn't really have a good definition. And the way I describe it to Grandview students is I'm a preacher and a teacher, right? And so I kind of have both of those roles. And so today, that's kind of my goal to be with you today as kind of preacher and teacher. Does that sound all right?
Yep, sure.
Excellent, good. So you guys have done a lot of labels for Meals from the Heartland.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I, too, have done a lot of labels for Meals from the Heartland. Did I mention my dad is Jim Hessman, right? And so because of, not just because of my dad, I think far before my dad, but we started packaging meals as a family. We did this on Thanksgiving. We'd all go do that together. We've done it at my children's schools where we do bags together. I have done it at the congregation that I serve. I run a little inner city after school program called Viking Kids Club, and our Viking Kids Club put the labels on those. But the thing about the interesting part about our Viking Kids Club is that they get to take some of those macaroni and cheese meals home with them at the end of the day, and their families are very blessed by them. Over on the east side where I work. And so I've had lots of chances to do Meals from the Heartland. But for the past 7 years, I've gotten to co-lead Lutheran Church of Hope's Mission Ghana program along with my dad. And that has been just a real blessing to me. I never imagined that my dad would be the kind of guy that would go on mission trips. And I can say this because he's here. But I have led mission trips for 20 years. I've probably led 20 or 30 different mission trips. And then when my dad felt called to go to Ghana, I was really excited that we got to do this together. So it's a fun partnership that we get to do. Each year we take a group of about 12 people to experience the Ghanaian culture, and we get to look and see what God is doing in Ghana. And then we get to lean into our mission partner's social mandate. So our mission partner in Ghana is called GlobeServe. And GlobeServe is building churches, and they're trying to reach out to Ghanaian people. And their social mandate believes that God, in his goodness, calls all people, regardless of their beliefs or backgrounds, into care for each other. And so part of that social mandate, and what we do there is we distribute mosquito nets to make sure that people are preventing malaria. We provide borehole wells so that people can have clean water. We teach water for purification using SWIM, which is an organization here in Des Moines. And so we teach people how to purify their water. And then we've opened 2 vocational schools for women so they can learn sewing and be able to provide for themselves. And then the last thing that we do is work with Meals from the Heartland, and we partner with that. In June, this last June, I returned from my 6th trip to Ghana. And while there, we had the chance to prepare and serve the same meals that you guys package and label. And we bring them to go distribute them to children in the different villages. And we do this for a couple of reasons. One, because it's something for us to do with the kids while we are distributing mosquito nets to their parents, right? You have to keep them kind of busy and occupied. And 2, it gives them the opportunity for us to just bless the children in a village with just one simple little meal. It's not in its current structure anything that's long-term sustainable, but it's like a little gift that we give to the kids. We give them this healthy meal of soy and rice that they can enjoy that day. When we get there, we gather the children, and they speak another language. So usually we have the help of a teacher or 2 that will help us translate. And we gather them, and they'll sit in little circles. We try and get them to kind of gather together and get in circles. And then we bring a bowl around so that they can wash their hands in some of the clean borehole water. And then they sit there so nicely and quietly in a way that I just wish my own children would do. And then what we do is the women who will have prepared the Meals from the Heartland, and then they'll bring the bowl and they'll set it down in the middle of the group, and the children will silently eat. And then It's the most amazing, blissful, quiet, holy moment that we get to see, the satisfaction of them. These children then will grab some and make sure that the little ones alongside them are also eating, that their 2-year-old cousins and their 1-year-old brothers are getting a mouthful of the meals from the Heartland. It's really this holy, special moment. And every year when we go, the volunteers are always amazed at how well behaved the children are and how easy that this feeding process goes, even though that there is a language barrier between us. And for most years, this is the case. But 2 years ago, it didn't work out like that. The rains had not come yet because they have a rainy season and a dry season, and the rains were late. And so when we were in northern Ghana, the trees were barren when they're usually lush, and the Ghanaian people called it their hunger time. And for this particular year, they usually expect that they're going to have a hunger time, but for this year, it lasted an extra 6 weeks longer than usual. And they looked at me and they asked me how we handled our hunger time. And I thought about the protein bar I ate in the bus on the way to the village. I hadn't had 5 or 10 minutes of hunger time. One of the teachers was helping me work with the children and mothers and preparing these meals from the Heartland. And they asked me, said, Deacon Angie, what have we done wrong? Why is God punishing us so that the rains are not yet to come? Why is our climate so different here? And I was struck by this because I was thinking about my own impact on climate change. And I looked around and I didn't see any cars or fossil fuels or cheeseburgers that these people were enjoying. And we did our usual visit in the village, and it was time for us to bring out the meals from the Heartland. But this year was different because the kids couldn't sit in their sweet little circles. They were upset and feisty and couldn't keep their bodies still. The edginess was palpable, and the teachers tried to keep it in some kind of order. And I grabbed a bowl like I usually did, and I was going to bring it down to put in a group when my bowl was snatched by a child who ran off into the field to eat the meals. And all the other volunteers, as I looked around, had their bowls grabbed and snatched, and before I knew it, in 30 seconds, all the food was gone. And then I looked at the little children who didn't know what was going on, but the chaos was all around them, and their eyes was so much hunger and so much frustration. And my tears started to fall onto this barren, dry ground as I knew that I couldn't do anything else for these kids. I took the extra protein bars I had in my bag and I smuggled them to a few of the little ones. But at the end of the day, I got back on the bus, impoverished in my own helplessness. I was absolutely at the end of myself. And I had to get back on this bus and return home broken in a new kind of way. Now, I warned you I'm also a preacher. So if you will permit me just for a second, I am going to share with you a passage from John chapter 6. I'm sure you've heard it, but I think as a preacher, I like to tell people things over and over again. Okay. So John chapter 6, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs that he was doing, how he was healing the sick. And Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down with his disciples because the Jewish Passover festival was near. And Jesus looked up and he saw a great crowd coming towards him. He said to Philip, "Where are we going to buy bread for all these people to eat?" He said this only to test him because he already had in mind what he was going to do. And Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages for us to buy enough bread for everyone to have just a little bite." And another one of the disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up and said, Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how will they go so far when the crowd is so many?" So Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." And there was plenty of grass in that place. And they sat down, and there were about 5,000 men. Then Jesus took the loaves, and he gave thanks, and he distributed it to those who were seated, and they had as much as they wanted. And then he did the same thing with the fish. And when they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Go gather the pieces that are left over and fill them so that nothing can be wasted." So they gathered them, and they filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 loaves of barley left over by those who had already eaten. Okay. So in the Bible, Jesus feeds 5,000 people plus women and children, so we can safely assume that that's like 20,000 probably, right? And this is such an important story because it's familiar to us, right? But it's also the only story of its kind that is included in all 4 Gospels, right? So there's clearly something that God wants us to get about his nature and get about Jesus because he includes this in all of the Gospels. So I took this from John's gospel. And in John's gospel, we find Jesus being followed by a large crowd. And he's doing these really awesome signs, these great signs of healing. And I think if I heard of someone like that, I would want to follow too. He is healing the sick and he's speaking with authority. And like a good shepherd, he leads them up the mountain and sits down with his disciples. He sees this crowd coming near to him, and he worries about their hunger. So he looks to his friend and disciple Philip, and I love this part, right? And he leans over and he says, "So, where are we going to buy enough bread for all of these people to eat?" Right? To me, it's like the biblical equivalent for like, "Hey, watch what I'm going to do," right? And so Philip looks, he's like, "There's no way. This is not possible. 6 months' wages won't even get us close." And then Andrew comes in my head, and it's almost sarcastic when I hear it. He's like, "Well, there's this boy. He's got like 5 loaves and 2 fish, but I'm not sure what we're going to do with that or how that's even going to help," right? And Jesus, 5 loaves and 2 fish. Jesus leads this large crowd to sit down, and he takes this child's tiny little offering and he gives thanks for it. And in this gratitude, Jesus begins to pass out the food to this enormous hungry crowd. "Here, some bread for you. Here, fish for you. Here, don't worry. Here, don't be hungry. There is enough. Do not be afraid. Do not be hungry. There is enough for all of you." And I wish on that day in northern Ghana that there was no hunger season. There's a school that we support in southern Ghana where containers for meals from the Heartland have been packaged and sent to the same meals that you all have worked on and prepared. And the children at this school receive meals from the Heartland prepared for them for lunch a couple of days a week consistently. And I've been able to visit this school many times along with my dad. And we asked the principal, Jane, what a difference regular meals from the Heartland makes for the school. And she said to us 2 things. She said, number 1, the children are gaining weight, right? And number 2, the children are able to learn. You see, this is what sustainable food does for people. And this is what you all have done for people. You have enabled children to learn. You have enabled the little kids at my after-school program on the east side of Des Moines to learn. You have grown their bellies, and you have supplied nutrition so that they are able to grow and play and create and be calm and to learn. But there are so many of us, and there are so many people that just sit there and think like Philip and Andrew, what are our silly little 2 fish and 5 loaves? They're not enough. This little bit of extra we have won't do the trick. It's not going to make a difference for people. We continue to believe that we need more money, more something, more time to make this difference. We need more resources to care for others. We still manage to sit down and think that somehow we are lacking. I mean, really, this is a thought that comes through our minds every day. I mean, we feel like we lack. We lack money or time or ability or strength or energy. I'm a parent of 4 people, or patience, right? We think that we lack this. We think of some place where we come up empty, where we can't do anymore. And we live in this world that's constantly giving us these messages because they're trying to sell us on something else. We live in a world that we get stuck inside ourselves, right? Where we start to think about only our needs. And we tend to forget to open ourselves up to the needs of others around us. Human population has skyrocketed in the last 200 years due to the Industrial Revolution, to the increase in life expectancy, and a decline in infant mortality, among many other factors. And we all agree that less babies dying and less preventable disease is a good thing, right? Yet because of this, though, the earth is about to be home to 11 billion people by the end of this century. 11 billion people. Today we are about 7.6 billion. So you can see how fast this is growing. So I think the question is for us is to ask, is overpopulation the problem or is it overconsumption? Are there too many people taking up too many of the world's resources? And whose job is it to feed this 11 billion people out there? And I want to challenge you today. I think it's ours. And I think if you have been packaging Meals from the Heartland, you absolutely know and you've taken that responsibility to heart. And I want to thank you for taking that responsibility to heart. You have realized through your volunteering for Meals from the Heartland that it is our job collectively. It is our job as people on earth to make sure that these 11 billion people get food. So that our neighbors down the street, or that the neighbors at the food pantry here in Des Moines, or that the kids in Ghana, or the kids in Haiti, the mothers in South Africa, the fathers in Nicaragua, the students in Moldova, Honduras, Uganda, the Philippines, El Salvador, Ukraine, and all of the other natural disaster areas that have been hit, we really want to make sure that they are able to get this food. I'm going to show you a video here so you can see these kiddos, right? I'm going to show you their bellies full, their souls at peace, and their minds in a place where they are able to learn. And when it feels overwhelming and the task feels tiring to feed this 11 billion people, I want you to know that you all have made a difference. Even if it's just this great difference, or even if you gave your 5 loaves and your 2 fish. Because this is what Jesus does. He takes what you've got, and I think he gives a little wink. And he says, what have you got? Fish, bread, a little bit of time, the ability to put labels on, some energy, pocket change, just yourself? Watch what I can do.
How many bowls are there?
Oh yeah, lots more coming. Lots more coming.
So maybe if they can sit in groups of 5.
Okay.
Okay, so groups of 5. And then we'll put 1 bowl for a group of 5.
Well, I'm grateful for your time. I hope that you learned something about Meals from the Heartland. It's really, truly, I can't thank you enough. It's my honor to be able to take what you donate and what you give in your time. I feel very blessed that I get to go look at this one. I get to go look at those eyes, and like I said, I work on the east side, and so I get to see neighborhood kids here in Des Moines with the same look, and it's only because of the graciousness that you all have provided. It's the fact that you gave your 2 fish and your 5 loaves, and you said, "All right, God, what can you do?" So, thank you so much for letting me be here today.